Good to be together this morning. Grateful for the opportunity to open up God's Word and gain insight and clarity and hopefully even better spiritual vision that is going to be the subject of what we're going to look at here briefly this morning. And this very unusual miracle that Jesus performs, it's very unique and unusual in that he heals in two stages. We don't see Jesus do that in really any other instance. It's really the only instance we see that it had to take another effort or another step for him to have complete vision made whole. And as we look at the context of this scripture, we're going to find that there's a very particular reason why he did that, and a great lesson for us, hopefully, that we will accept and also take a lesson of humility, if we will, also, in how we see ourselves and what we need, and also how we see others around us and what they need. It's interesting that it says there in chapter 8, Mark chapter 8, it says he took this blind man who was brought to him, and in verse 23 it says, taking him by the hand, he brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? And he looked up and said, I see men, for I see them like trees walking around. In other words, I'm seeing some measure of improvement, but there seems to be some confusion, some blurriness in his vision, still had not been totally handled. And so it says in verse 24, and he looked up and said, I see men, for I see them like trees walking around. Then again he laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored, and began to see, notice he began to see everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, do not even enter the village. So on one stage, he is able to have his eyes open. There's an opening of his eyes, but there is a second stage that needs addressed because he doesn't see everything clearly. It's interesting because as we go through the text and we go through the Gospel of Mark, and we're going to see a variety of individuals who came to Jesus with obvious issues, obvious problems that they needed to be addressed. And remember, Jesus always made the point that whatever he did physically always has a deeper spiritual application for us. Many of the physical miracles he performed had a deeper spiritual kind of a way that we might maybe make the application for ourselves. In other words, that we recognize that Jesus, while he was able to raise people from the dead, he does not physically raise people from the grave today, but he spiritually lifts us out of the death of our sin. And he's able to do that. And there are a variety of other things that Jesus needs to heal us of. And one of the most needed things that we need is to see things clearly. We need to see things clearly because one of the key elements that's going to help us follow Jesus, even after we've been risen spiritually from the dead out of our sin, is we need to be able to see him leading us, and we need to see where our steps are. We need to see when our steps are off the path, and we need to see when our steps are on the path, that we can continue to move forward and not get off of that path. And we recognize that spiritual vision that needs clarity is very difficult, for the very reason that oftentimes we don't often realize just how blind we are. We often do not realize how truly blurry our vision is because often we think we have 20/20 vision. Is that interesting? One of the key things that comes out of this text is going to come later in another chapter. It's going to come in Mark chapter 10. Turn over to Mark chapter 10. We find an individual who brings further clarity for us as to what is the application that we need to gain from this. And we see in Mark chapter 10 and verse 46, it says, then they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road. When he heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. many were sternly telling him to be quiet, but he kept crying out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." What's interesting is here the crowd of individuals who hear this poor blind man crying out for Jesus. And what's interesting, the first reaction he gets from the crowd is, Jesus doesn't need to see you. They're on their way to Jerusalem, where their anticipation is that a lot of fanfare and a lot of celebration is about to take place, because in their minds, again, they think they see Jesus perfectly clearly, don't they? They think they know exactly what Jesus is going to do and why he's going there. And they look at Bartimaeus and say, "I'm sorry, buddy, but you are not what Jesus came here to do right now. You better be quiet and let this man get on his more important business." And Jesus has to make a point here and say, I'm sorry, but no, I actually would like to see this man. It says, notice in verse 47, when he heard that it was Jesus, the Nazarene, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." That's a very interesting title, Son of David. In other words, the son of the king, the one who has the rightful place to be enthroned king. Interesting. We see two perspectives that are very different about what the purpose of this king is. These people also see Jesus as the Son of David, and they're about to crown him in Jerusalem, or so they think they're going to. They think he's going to sit upon his throne in Jerusalem, and he's going to destroy all of their enemies, and life is going to be sweet and pleasant and roses, and no other problems are going to face their lives ever, because Jesus is going to fix all those problems for them. And we don't have time for a poor beggar named Bartimaeus. But it says in verse 49, Jesus stopped and said, "Call him here." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage and stand up. He is calling for you." Throwing aside his cloak, he jumped up and came to Jesus. And answering him, Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabboni, I want to regain my sight." What stands out about Bartimaeus that was interesting about him, other than the rest of the crowd, he knows just how blind he is. He knows how poor his vision is. He accepts it, and he asks the right request. The request is, "Help me see things clearly." Isn't it interesting? The first man that Jesus did this, he never asked Jesus. The crowd brought him to him. The crowd had this blind man. They brought him to Jesus, and Jesus, "Okay, well, I'm gonna make a point here, because I know why they brought you here, and I know why they want me to do this. They want me to further show proof of what they think I'm going to do." They think that Jesus needs to put proof in the minds of all the people that he is going to be their physical king. But he also recognizes, "I'm glad that you're following me." Yes, that's a start. These people were following Jesus, but they were also very misguided. And Jesus, I believe, is making a point with this particular healing. And you go back there to Mark chapter 8, because what we find here, when the man says, when Jesus asks in verse 23, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see men, for I see them like trees walking around." His eyes were being opened, but he still needed more help from Jesus to see it better. And that description fits perfectly with the crowd that was actually following Jesus. It wasn't just this man who needed a second dose of Jesus' healing to help him see better. In fact, back up to Mark chapter 6, and we find this whole crowd suffers from the very thing this man has. "I see something, and it's a little better than nothing. I'll grant you that. But I don't know that we're there all the way." And the irony is, they didn't see that. They thought they saw everything just fine. But that wasn't the case. Mark chapter 6 and verse 34. Mark 6 verse 34 says, when Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. He began to teach them many things. When it was already quite late, his disciples came to him and said, this place is desolate and it is already quite late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. And again, Jesus kind of reprimands them and says, I don't think you see the situation clearly. I don't think you really understand what's happening here. You give them something to eat. What are we supposed to do about it? And it says, they said to him, shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread and give them something to eat? And he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go look. And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Now I guarantee you, when they're looking at that 5 loaves and 2 fish, they're looking with very blurred vision, aren't they? They don't see what Jesus is about to do with that. They are totally misguided. They think in their minds, I know what to do. Tell these people to go home because we can't do anything for you. Couldn't have been further from the truth. And Jesus is about to help them recognize, I think you need to start looking a little bit deeper. I want to invite you to go beyond just what you see on the surface and stretch your understanding because you're very limited. And what you see in me is very blurred. Because they could not understand what feeding a bunch of hungry souls had to do with sitting on his throne. What does that have to do with this? They were misguided, but they were honestly misguided. And they had, yes, the right Savior to look to. And what I love about this is that Jesus, his answer is, I'm not going to send you away either. That's his answer. Really, many people might say, I think Jesus would do a much better with about people who could understand you a little bit quicker, a little bit quicker to understand. These people are holding you back. Well, in many ways, that's what the disciples thought about the initial crowd. They're holding us back. They're keeping us back. Tell them to get away from us. And I love Jesus' compassion and his patience shines through, doesn't it? We don't need to tell them to go anywhere. We just need to show them something. And the same was true for the very disciples who actually wanted Jesus to send a whole crowd of people hungry for his teaching away. Perhaps maybe we should have told them to get out of there. Maybe if someone would have wised up, would have said, you know what, you guys are holding us back. Every time you speak up, it's something totally off the wall, and you just don't understand, do you? Jesus, amazing, was just as patient with his own disciples as he is with this crowd of hungry, curious seekers. And it's amazing. And he's patient with them. Notice in verse 38, he said, how many loaves do you have? Go look. And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. And they don't see what Jesus wants them to see, do they? So he commands them all to sit down by groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds of 50s. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food and broke the loaves, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before them. And he divided up the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 full baskets of the broken pieces and also of the fish. And there were 5,000 men who ate the loaves, and they disciples were not beside themselves. What just happened here? And it continues on. Go on to Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8 and verse 1. Their confused, blurred vision continues to be seen. In Mark chapter 8 verse 1, it says, in those days when there was again a large crowd, and they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples and said to them, I feel compassion for the people because they have remained with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. And some of them have come from a great distance. What's great here is Jesus said, remember what I just showed you with that large group, not just many days before. Remember that? He's trying to play the game Connect the Dots. It's a very simple game that little children play. Connect the dots. Do you see where the next dot needs to be connected? We have that sequence 1, 2, 3. If you can do your number system, you know where the next dot goes if you see in 3 and 4. Well, Jesus is doing about on a kindergarten level, connect the dots with grown adults. And he literally is setting up, he's kind of hinting, number 1 was the previous crowd. This is number 2. What do you think we should do? I don't know. I think they don't see things quite clearly yet. You don't know? You can't see it? No, they couldn't see it. Verse 4, here's their answer. To connect the dots. And his disciples answered him, where will anyone be able to find enough bread here in this desolate place to satisfy these people? Number 2 dot looking you right in the face and you can't see it. Couldn't see it. And he was asking, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. And he directed the people to sit down on the ground, and taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke them and started giving them to his disciples to serve them. And they served them to the people. They also had a few small fish, and after he'd blessed them, he ordered these to be served as well. And they ate and were satisfied, and they picked up 7 large baskets full of what was left over of the broken pieces. About 4,000 were there, and he sent them away. And immediately he entered the boat with the disciples and came to the district of Dalmanutha. Now you would think, you would assume, that after they connect 1 dot and 2 dot, they're starting to see a picture form. They still don't see it. They still don't see it. Listen to what he says. In verse 11, the Pharisees came out and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven. To test him, sighing deeply in his spirit, he said, why does this generation seek for a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. Leaving them, he again embarked and went away to the other side. And they had forgotten to take bread. We're out of bread. Even after all those baskets were full, apparently they ran out. We didn't take anything with us. And they're concerned about this. And they did not have more than 1 loaf in the boat. Oh, so in their minds, well, before we had 5. We had a couple others last time. We only have 1. Only 1. Only 1 loaf of bread. And this is what Jesus says. He was giving orders to them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they began to discuss with one another the fact that they had no bread. And Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why do you discuss the fact that you have no bread? And what he does, he's like a kindergarten teacher, pulls the paper out and says, let me show you what you're missing. Starts circling things, pointing arrows to things. Look what he does. Do you not yet see or understand? Do you have a hardened heart? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of broken pieces you picked up? They said to him, 12. When I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets full of broken pieces did you pick up? And they said to him, 7. And he was saying to them, do you not yet understand? The very next miracle he does is this one we're looking at of the man who he starts to see, but it's not exactly clear. What Jesus is going to show them is amazing. Not only does Jesus say, I have the power to heal you, but you have to ask me. Because you have to admit, I don't see it. And there's two really just simple, but I feel profound lessons from that. Number one, isn't it amazing just how patient Jesus truly is with those who have so much yet to see and just don't see it? Those who have made initial steps, granted, maybe they still have a large journey to go to make all of this worthwhile. But that's what we see with the disciples. It's amazing to me just how patient Jesus is with them. And he is all throughout their encounters with him. In fact, it goes on about the very next situation, even after Jesus tries to paint this picture. Do you get what I'm trying to say? He was trying to make it very clear for them, but not give them the answers. And that's a tricky thing to do. That's a very tricky thing for a teacher to do. It's very hard for a teacher to try to point to why you're missing pieces, but not give you the answer, because you have to figure it out. And that's what Jesus is doing. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but I'm going to try to give you every piece of this puzzle to show you that you need to ask. Because ask, he says, and it will be given to you. Knock, and the door shall be opened. They have to be humble enough and at least see, I don't quite see this all the way. And verse 27 shows us they're not quite there yet either. They're not at the point where they even are able to see they don't see it and recognize they need to ask for it. They don't see that. So Jesus gives a little test. Mark chapter 8, verse 27. Jesus went out along with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he questioned his disciples, saying to them, who do people say that I am? They told him, saying, John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, but others, one of the prophets. And he continued by questioning them, but who do you say that I am? Peter answered and said to him, you are the Christ. And he warned them to tell no one about them. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he was stating the matter plainly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning around and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's. In other words, Peter, you're just like that guy that I just had to heal twice. You don't see me clearly yet, do you? Now, truly what I find amazing is that Peter remained with Jesus and Jesus remained with Peter all the way to the very death, burial, and resurrection, even when Peter himself couldn't even see his own weaknesses, and Jesus is trying to warn him. Peter represents, of all those disciples, every one of them has it, but they all have a huge what? Blind spot. Every last one of these disciples has a gaping hole where they can't see clearly. And yet all the while, Jesus is commending them for following. Jesus is encouraging them to keep going further. He never ever gives the impression that he's exasperated his patience. He's done. There can be no, he constantly is helping them. In fact, turn over to Psalm 37. There's a great psalm that I believe really matches what Jesus does here, that really paints a very beautiful picture for us, why this is and what happens. Why is Jesus so patient, and what is happening as we fail sometimes to grasp the whole picture? Psalm 37, verse 23. The steps of a man are established by the Lord, and he, notice, he delights in his way. Now, these aren't perfect steps, as the next verse is going to tell us. Which the Lord loves every imperfect, crooked, stumbling step we make towards him. The Lord is not critical of those who are seeking to come to him. What does he do, though? What does he say? Read the next verse. The steps of a man are established by the Lord, and he delights in his way. When he falls, he will not be hurled headlong. He will not dispose of him. Why? Because the Lord is the one who holds his hand. Is that not beautiful? Is that not a beautiful picture? It is a picture of the Lord seeing a little child that is starting to walk. And rather than say, I'm not going to be beside you until you can walk like a full-grown man. Until you can walk without stumbling. No, he sees every one of us like that. We are all even grown. That's how these were grown adults. They were but they're like little children trying to figure out how to walk. And the picture is Jesus was holding their hands. And when they would stumble, he would hold them and keep them from being totally discarded. Because he understands how little we really see. And he's so excited about what we do see. He's encouraging. He's inviting. Come on, little one. Let me see you grow. And I love this because this is a wonderful, we give the invitation, right? And the invitation, I believe, should always be encompassed with this kind of spirit. Come, yes, but come, what do we say, as you are, just as I am, right? You may not know everything right away, and that's fine. I'm not going to know everything right away. And that's the next step for us. And if any of us thinks we know everything right now, we need a little dose of humble pie to realize we still have to have fine-tuning with our vision. We still need constant blessings from the Lord to help us see better. But isn't that amazing that his patience is that he literally is taking us by the hand, and he doesn't want us to feel that any little step we've taken is for naught or in vain. He wants us to keep going. Turn to Mark chapter 9, another lesson they learned in this context. Sadly, too often we are far too critical and not like the Lord in this regard. And in Mark chapter 9, notice what happens in verse 38. In Mark chapter 9, verse 38, it says, John said to him, Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to prevent him because he was not following us. And Jesus said, Do not hinder him, for there is no one who will perform a miracle in my name and be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is for us. For whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because of your name as followers of Christ, truly I say to you, he will not lose his reward. And I think that's probably a pretty accurate commentary on us, and what we also need to have the Lord show us. Amazingly, we are far too critical of the imperfect steps others make rather than seeing the good that they are doing and encouraging them like Jesus does to keep getting better. Come on. That doesn't mean we don't, as Jesus did, point out where they clearly misstepped or point out where clearly they fell and stumbled. But I love the picture, though, is not that he leaves us totally on our own or discards us or says, when you figure it out, you come tap me on the shoulder and we'll pick up where we left off. He's with us every step of the way. So a couple points as we bring this to a close, just two simple points. Let us also learn that lesson from Jesus, that we might have our eyes open, that we often do not see things clearly enough and often need Jesus to give us more doses of his love and his example, that we might be more patient, that we might be more encouraging, and that we might be more understanding. But also a word of encouragement to those who maybe are fearful of their own mistakes and fearful of their own misunderstanding and fearful of what that implies. All it implies is that you need more teaching and understanding, and the Lord is faithful to give it to you. And as long as you continue to make those steps towards him, he is faithful to make your vision better. One final passage, turn to Philippians chapter 3, and I believe Paul really sums this all up. And I appreciate the way Paul's attitude. Paul himself says, I'll tell you, he says, if any one of us ever says, well, hey, we finally have 20/20 vision, we're still blind. Because Paul opens up saying, I'll tell you one thing. He says, I would never, ever in a million years say I've already got it. Paul said that. He said, I know I'm not there. And therefore, let us also have this attitude. He says, but notice what he says in Philippians chapter 3, in verse 12. Not that I have already obtained it or have already become perfect, but I press on so that I may lay hold of that for which also I was laid hold of by Christ Jesus. That's really all any of us can do. And all any of us can hope for others to do is to press on. Keep going. No, yeah, you're mistaken. That's not it. That's not correct. But keep going. Look how far you've come. Look where you are. Look where you are now compared to where you were before. You got the don't give up. And that's what he says. It says in verse 13. He says, brethren, I do not regard myself as having laid hold of it yet. But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. And make no mistake about it, this is coming from a man who once said, I see clearly, and had horrible vision. And it took literally, physically being blinded to accept spiritually how much he needed to learn. And he never forgot that. He always held on to that. I know I'm not about to say I think I've got this all figured out yet. He says, I'm not going to say that. I once did, and the Lord had to humble me with physical blindness. And he encourages us, let us all encourage one another and encourage each other to humbly, simply root for one another, pray for one another, encourage one another, and help us all see it a little bit better. In verse 14, he says, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Let us, therefore, as many as are perfect, have this attitude. And if in anything you have a different attitude, God will reveal that also to you. However, let us keep living by that same standard to which we have attained. Jesus says he knows our steps and he loves every single crooked, imperfect one of them. And he holds us by the hand, knowing we're going to stumble, and encourages us to say, keep on, don't give up. If anyone is with us has never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ, we encourage you to, yes, take one big, giant, imperfect step. Yeah, you may not fully understand it. You may not fully feel confident in all of what it implements. To die to the world, that's a large call, isn't it? I'm going to die to my sins. I'm going to die to everything. Well, start by just saying, Jesus, I know you're going to have to help me. You're the Son of God. Confessing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're essentially saying, Lord, you're going to have to help me with this. And do your very best in faith to, yes, comply with the Scriptures. He who believes and is baptized will be saved. To be willing to, in faith, say, yes, I repent. I'm turning from all of the sinful ways of this world, and I'm going to seek to turn to the Lord. And as you rise up out of the waters of baptism, cleansed and whole, make no mistake about it, Jesus is there to hold your hand as you stop, as you step, as you learn to crawl and then learn to walk. He's going to be there guiding, encouraging, saying, keep coming. And let us all be willing to have that humility as we seek to encourage each other. If anyone has also done that but needs to come back and maybe have your own vision restored and your walk more closely to him, won't you let us be encouragement to you and help you in any way? Won't you come forward while we stand and sing this song of encouragement?